For decades, coffee imports entered the United States largely duty-free, but now some of America's top trading partners are facing double-digit tariffs on their imports, including coffee. That's true of Brazil, the largest supplier of coffee to the United States. Its exports now face a 50% tariff into America.
That minute of calm, that moment of relaxation, is about to get much more expensive in the United States. New tariffs imposed on coffee from Brazil have been announced by President Trump.
I do believe that the U.S. does need to manufacture more goods. So I agree with that.
Something strange is happening in America, and most people don't even realize it. The price of your morning coffee didn't just rise because of inflation, supply issues, or corporate profits. No, this time the real reason is a single political decision that spiraled into a global shift nobody saw coming. A shift that pushed America out of a market it once dominated and quietly opened the door for Canada to walk right in. It started the moment President Trump signed an order to impose a massive 50% tariff on Brazilian imports. One decision, one policy move, and instantly the world's biggest coffee exporter and the world's biggest coffee consumer were thrown into a fight neither side was prepared for. Inside the U.S., buyers panicked, importers froze. Entire shipments of Brazilian coffee sat at American ports, waiting for clearance that never came. Contracts were put on hold, retailers backed away, cafes struggled with rising wholesale prices. And ordinary Americans, millions of people whose day begins with a simple cup of coffee, suddenly felt the shock ripple straight into their wallets. But here's the part no one expected. Brazil didn't panic, it didn't get desperate, and it definitely didn't wait for Washington to fix the problem it created. Instead, Brazil made a decision America never thought it would actually make. It stopped relying on the United States as a stable, trustworthy buyer. For decades, the U.S. believed that if it applied pressure through tariffs, trade threats, or political leverage, other countries would fall in line. But this time, the strategy backfired. Because Brazil didn't just find new buyers, it upgraded them. China responded first, then Europe, and then came the biggest plot twist of all, a country that doesn't grow coffee, doesn't have tropical climate, and doesn't even pretend to be a player in the coffee market. A country that stepped into the role America left wide open, and it did so quietly, calmly, and strategically. Canada. While America fought a tariff war, Canada made phone calls. While U.S. importers were tangled in red tape, Canadian buyers were signing long-term supply agreements. While shipments to America sat stuck at ports, cargo ships began rerouting toward Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. And here's what makes this story even more unbelievable. Canada became one of Brazil's most reliable coffee partners without growing a single coffee bean. For Brazil, the message was clear. Why depend on a buyer that changes policy overnight when you can sell to a country that values stability, predictability, and long-term trade? Why gamble on political swings when another market is offering consistent demand with zero drama? For years, America assumed the global coffee trade revolved around it. But the truth is much harsher. The world doesn't need America to buy coffee. The world needs Brazil to grow it. That shift in power, from buyer to supplier, changed everything. Inside the U.S., the effect was immediate. Prices rose, shelves thinned, small coffee shops struggled to maintain supply. Large chains increased prices quietly, hoping customers wouldn't notice. But the biggest cost wasn't the price at the counter, it was the loss of trust. Brazil no longer saw the U.S. as a reliable market. And once trust goes, it doesn't come back easily, even if the tariff is removed later. Meanwhile, Canada was experiencing the complete opposite reality. Cafes didn't face the same panic. Importers didn't fear sudden political changes. Canadian companies locked in long-term Brazilian supply, ensuring stable prices and consistent shipments. Canada didn't become a coffee superpower because of production. It became one because of predictability, and that's something Washington underestimated. In global trade, power isn't always about how big your economy is. It's about how dependable you are. A single unpredictable move can shift decades of partnership in a matter of days. But what makes this story even more dramatic is the second layer, the geopolitical impact. Because once Canada stepped in, the international market shifted permanently. Buyers in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East saw the US losing influence. They saw Brazil diversifying. They saw Canada rising as a stable, predictable partner. And that dynamic slowly began shaping a new global coffee trade where America wasn't at the center anymore. Here's the quiet truth few Americans know. When a supply chain changes direction, it rarely switches back. Brazil's new contracts with Canada weren't temporary. Many were multi-year commitments. Some involved investment in logistics. Some included expansion of roasting operations inside Canada. And some even positioned Canada as a re-export hub, a bridge between Brazil and Europe. Think about that for a moment. Canada went from being just another importer to being a major strategic partner to potentially being a redistribution center for global coffee trade. All because America imposed a tariff it thought would show strength. But instead of showing strength, it revealed a weakness in policy consistency, stability, predictability, and global trust. Countries don't just trade goods, they trade confidence. And Brazil found more confidence in Canada than it had in the US. This shift didn't happen with protests, speeches, or global headlines. It didn't happen with drama on TV or political debates. It happened quietly, in sealed contracts, in redirected shipments, in boardrooms, and in long-term agreements. And when the US finally rolled back the tariff months later, it was already too late. Brazil had moved on, Canada had stepped in, and the global market had settled into a new shape, one that didn't revolve around America anymore. For American consumers, the result is simple: higher prices, less stability, a supply chain that no longer prioritizes them, and a market where the US is no longer the default buyer. For Canada, the benefits are clear: stronger trade ties, better supply security, strategic advantage, a more influential place at the global table, all achieved without confrontation, without tariffs, and without political battles. This is the difference between power and stability. The US tried to use power. Canada offered stability. And in global trade, stability wins every time. Because in a world where supply chains can collapse overnight, where political decisions can disrupt entire industries instantly, and where trust is becoming the most valuable currency in international trade, countries are choosing partners they can depend on. This is the reality the US must confront. America didn't lose the coffee market because of Brazil. It lost it because of its own unpredictability. Canada didn't win because it is more powerful. It won because it is more consistent. And while millions of Americans continue paying more for their morning coffee, the global supply chain has already shifted north, quietly, permanently, strategically. This isn't just a story about tariffs. This isn't just a story about trade. This is a story about how a simple policy decision exposed a deeper truth about the new global economy, a truth America can't ignore anymore. Canada didn't grow a single coffee bean, but it grew something far more valuable: trust. And in today's world, trust decides who leads and who gets left behind.